Hello, I'm Julie, the Cancer Dietitian, and your host for the Cancer Dietitian podcast. I am a board-certified specialist in oncology nutrition and a registered dietitian nutritionist with a master's degree in public health. I'm the creator of CancerDietitian.com and wellness director for Cancer Services, the nonprofit cancer support agency that makes this podcast possible. Today's topic is nutrition and immunity. A few days ago, I co-presented a webinar on this topic, and rather than posting the audio from the entire webinar, I'm going to give you the down and dirty info today and expand on some of the topics in my next few episodes. For the regular listeners out there, you know that I like to offer you a free pass to check out early and not have to listen to my long explanations, and I do that by giving you the bottom line up front. For this topic, the take-home message is that foods cannot boost your immune system, which is fine because you do not want an overactive immune system anyway. However, a nutritious diet can support your immune system. It is best to get immune supportive nutrients in food form rather than pill or supplement form unless you have a diagnosed deficiency. And when it comes to an immune supportive dietary pattern, the current recommendations for immune health are the same as current overall health guidelines. We want you to consume a healthy diet full of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, omega-3 fats, and pre- and probiotics, and then limit intake of added sugars, refined starches, saturated and trans fats, and alcohol. Be sure to do other immune supportive behaviors as well, like being physically active, getting good sleep, and washing your hands, of course. And also during a pandemic, please wear a mask, mind your social distance, and get your vaccine to help support your immune system. Now that I've given you the bottom line, I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of what these recommendations are. There are a lot of claims that certain foods or supplements can boost your immune system, but the immune system is not fully understood, and so any research on improving immune function and fighting off infections is preliminary. The immune system is a complex system, many different cells and components, and therefore no one single food or food component has been found to affect the system as a whole. But what do we know in terms of research on nutrition and immunity? They have found that deficiencies in certain vitamins and minerals, such as vitamin A, D, C, and E, zinc, and selenium, may increase risk for infection. However, consumption of supplementation beyond the body's need has not been shown to further support immune function. This is what I would say consistent with many of the other messages we have around nutrition supplements. If you have a deficiency, then you should use supplements to get your numbers back in the normal range. You may need to continue supplementation to keep them in that normal range, or you might be able to just eat a healthy diet and maintain your nutrient levels. However, consuming nutrients in supplement form that are high doses is not recommended and sometimes is detrimental to good health. So currently, there's not enough evidence to support the claim that vitamin C can prevent a cold, and any reduction in symptom length is not dramatic enough to support supplement use. Also, zinc supplementation has not been shown to prevent a cold, and too much zinc may actually impair your immune system. And there's no convincing evidence that any herb or supplement can improve the body's ability to fight off an infection, and over-supplementation with certain herbs can be dangerous. So we do want to remind you that it's important to pay attention to the supplements that you use, because supplements are not regulated and therefore may not even contain the ingredients they claim to contain. So if you have been told to consume a supplement because of a deficiency, make sure that you get a good quality brand of supplement. Let's get to the food. What foods should you eat to support your immune system? First of all, everything works together. So yes, you have to eat a healthy diet to feed your whole body. And there are some things you can do every day to help keep your immune system strong. And so we call these immune supporting foods or immune supportive dietary patterns, because research shows that it's an overall pattern of eating that makes the biggest difference in supporting your immune system. The pattern that we like to see is to have a diet that has a lot of phytochemicals. Those are plant nutrients. So you're eating lots of plants like fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans and nuts and seeds. You consume a good amount of omega-3 fats. You have adequate minerals and vitamins and antioxidants, and you consume prebiotics and probiotics. So I will say the probiotics got the most attention and questions on our webinar this week. So we're going to do a separate episode on that. But you might just wonder, what is the difference between prebiotics and probiotics? And it's actually pretty simple. Prebiotics are food for good bacteria. They are non-digestible components of food that's found in fiber, and that can include pretty much any plant food that has fiber in it will be a probiotic, but specifically you can think about oranges, beans, oats, asparagus, bananas, Jerusalem artichokes. They're things that have great soluble fibers that help feed the good bacteria in your intestines. The good bacteria that prebiotics are feeding is called probiotics. And these help keep your immune system strong. When people talk about your microbiome in your intestines, that's what they're talking about, keeping a healthy gut so that you have beneficial bacteria in your intestines that help keep your immune system strong. You can find probiotics and active cultures in yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut. It's debatable about how much is in kombucha, but some people will say it's in there. And yes, you would actually be eating bacteria that's good for you. However, keep in mind that more is not necessarily better. So we'll talk in another episode about probiotic supplements and whether you might need them or not. The next on my list is omega-3 fats. These can be found in plants as well as animals. Plants have alpha-linolenic acid, which is not active in the body and must be converted to two other forms of omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA. And unfortunately, your body's ability to convert ALA or alpha-linolenic acid is limited. Therefore, the best sources for omega-3 fats are from animals like fatty fish. So think tuna, salmon, sardines. But if you are a vegetarian, you can aim to include sources of omega-3 from things like flaxseed, chia, and walnuts. And of course, if you are a fish lover and a vegetable lover, you can include sources of both. And just as a side note, some breast cancer survivors are concerned about flax intake, but what we know from data is that it's perfectly safe for breast cancer survivors to consume flax, even if you are on estrogen blocking medication. Next on our list, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. Vitamins A, C, D, and E are all good for the immune system. Vitamin A is found in animal products like liver, which probably a lot of people don't eat often, but you can also find it in whole milk and eggs, and found in orange plants like pink grapefruit, cantaloupe, pumpkin, and sweet potatoes. Vitamin C is found in citrus fruits, kiwi, mango, cauliflower, green peppers, and it's also an antioxidant. Vitamin D is found through your skin from sun exposure. Now I'm recording this in February in North Carolina, so a little harder to get that vitamin D exposure. You can also consume it in egg yolks, saltwater fish, and fortified foods. And then last on our vitamin list is vitamin E, which is found in vegetable oils, nuts, seeds, and leafy greens. And vitamin E is also an antioxidant. In terms of minerals, we'll talk just briefly about zinc, which is a great nutrient. You want to be sure to eat foods that contain zinc. You can find those in dark meat, nuts, whole grains, and beans, and it also functions as an antioxidant. Copper is also a mineral and found in beans, nuts, leafy greens, and shrimp. So you'll see, I don't think that you need to sit around and calculate how much you have of different vitamins and minerals, but just remember that if you get a variety of nutritious foods, you are likely meeting your needs and you don't have to spend a lot of time calculating. Phytochemicals is the last thing on our list for our immune supportive dietary pattern. It is important that you get these plant nutrients. I talk a lot about these. You can hear about it in my Survivor Diet podcast episode. These are also called phytonutrients, and they are biologically active components that are only found in plants. So this means that you can get them through whole grains, beans, nuts, fruits, and vegetables. And the more you consume of them, the better you meet your body's needs. They help our immune system stay strong and promote health. Remember that your body prefers nutrients from food, not pills. So if anyone is telling you that a supplement is immune boosting or can prevent sickness, it's probably just someone who wants money for a product that they may or may not even be accurate what's in that product because of the lack of regulation. So really be cautious with those, and remember that boosting your immune system is not always a good thing. If you think you need a supplement, be in touch with your medical team about how to see if your levels are low and monitor if a supplement is effective. Let's move on to what kinds of foods distract the immune system. So when I use the term immune distracting, it just means that when you don't provide the nutrients your body needs to maintain a strong immune system, it gets distracted from doing its job. So when it comes to an immune distracting dietary pattern, what we know is that the following types of foods should be limited or should not make up your typical dietary pattern: added sugars and refined starch, saturated fats and trans fats, and alcohol. So when we talk about this pattern, of course, you don't have to be perfect in your eating. You certainly have room to include some of these foods sometimes. It's just on a regular basis, you want to be sure that you're limiting them. So a lot of times people blame sugar for causing or feeding cancer, but that statement is an oversimplification of the truth, and you can learn more about that in my Myths podcast about sugar and cancer. But the thing about sugar is that it is actually complicated. There's lots of different types of sugar. There's natural sugar, fruit sugar, added sugars, artificial sugars, and the type and how much you consume is what's most important. So while glucose, or the building block of carbohydrate, feeds every cell in our body, it's okay to add some sugar into a healthy diet. The problem is if you don't just have a little bit of added sugar, like a teaspoon in your cup of coffee or tea, or brown sugar on your oatmeal, or some kind of, dusting of sugar to sweeten your grapefruit. The problem comes if you form a pattern of eating a lot of added sugar from sweets, processed foods, and sugary beverages. And that's kind of the habit we see the typical American in, is just consuming sweetened beverages multiple times a day and then adding a lot of sweets and processed foods into their diets that contain a lot of added sugar that they may or may not be aware of. So I say there's a big difference between a teaspoon of sugar in your coffee and the 9 teaspoons of sugar when you get the coffee shop mocha. And it's not that you can't add sugar to your coffee. I don't have a problem with, adding a little sugar, but sometimes we're adding more than a little sugar and it's, dessert for breakfast. Be mindful of that eating pattern. In addition to keeping your added sugars kind of in check, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to how often you're consuming refined starches or processed starches. So instead of those processed white or enriched grains, we want to make a habit out of choosing whole grains like whole grain bread, brown rice, barley, quinoa, oats, or teff is kind of a grain that I like that's a little bit harder to find, but can be a hot cereal in the morning. Saturated fats and trans fats are also the types of fats that we consider less healthy. It's not that you need to completely eliminate them, because you do need some solid fats sometimes. Let's think about baking or pan frying something. But for some things, when it's appropriate, choose oils to cook with rather than choosing solid fats. And be sure to read the ingredient list and nutrition facts labels on the foods that you buy at the grocery store. The other point I'll make about this is that coconut oil is also a saturated fat. So while it can sometimes be touted by some as this healthy fat alternative, I still consider it a saturated fat, and therefore it's one that you won't want to have a lot of the time. Whatever you use as a liquid oil, I would keep using that. If you want to use coconut oil in place of butter in some of your recipes, that would be kind of an equal trade. So a lot of people have questions about, well, if some is okay, how much is too much? Where do I draw the line? What makes something a pattern of eating? What makes my dietary pattern versus whether it's a sometimes food? And I do find this is difficult for people. They want to sort of consume things in moderation, and they can get caught in a way of thinking where they feel like their diet has to be absolutely perfect. And if they contaminate their diet with a little bit of added sugar, somehow that's going to throw everything off. And it doesn't work that way. You are allowed to have some added sugars, some butter, some of these things that we're talking about as immune distracting. It's just we don't want to make a habit out of doing those most of the time. So as long as you have a good balance, I think that's good enough. There's a couple of tools that I use to just evaluate things. I would define something as a habit if you do it 3 times a week or more. It's something you do occasionally if you do it 1 or 2 times a week. It's sparing if it's 0 or once a week. And then seldom would be less than once a week. If you are having soda 3 times a week, then that's a habit. So maybe we want to get it back to 2 or 1. And then you also want to pay attention to what your good habits are, right? So is eating fruit with breakfast your habit? That's a good habit. Washing your hands before you eat, that's a good habit. Brushing your teeth, that's a good habit. So you can think about some of your behaviors in that context. It is more important to focus on giving your body the nutrients it needs rather than focusing on what you should avoid. And also, life is more fun when you do that. To me, the secret to having the strongest immune system is to be sure you're including those immune supportive foods regularly. And when you focus on all those wonderful nourishing nutrients, you'll find that you don't have nearly as much room in your eating pattern or in your stomach for the other less nourishing nutrients. And by making things at home, you do have more control over how much is added. So if there's something that you're really craving that's, an added sugar or a sweet that you typically buy at the store, is that something you could enjoy making at home where you can choose how to alter the recipe the way you like it? That wraps up our episode for today. If you got lost in some of the details, let me just give you what you need to know for sure. And that is that to consume an immune supportive diet, you want to be sure to include plenty of phytochemicals or plant nutrients, omega-3 fats, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants from foods, and pre- and probiotics. And then the dietary habits that you want to do more limiting in order to support your immune system is to limit your added sugars, refined starches, saturated, trans fat, and alcohol. So if you want to make sure to support that immune system, focus on those positive things that you need to include in your diet for your best overall health. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Cancer Dietitian Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. I always love to hear feedback on future topics, so let me know what you want to learn about. Send me an email, julie@cancerdietitian.com, or find me on social media. I'm at Cancer Dietitian on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Share this episode with your friends and be sure to subscribe to the Cancer Dietitian Podcast.